Aminat, a half-Chinese who was supposed to be invincible to everyone in the kingdom, turned out to be admired by the crown prince, Prince Sung, and even though she knew this wasn't right for her, she couldn't stop it. The sun had barely risen over the misty hills, casting a golden glow through the wooden windows of the Chi household. Inside the grand bedroom adorned with red silk and golden embroidery, Aminat knelt quietly behind her stepsister, Mei Mei, brushing her long black hair. Her own fingers trembled slightly with each stroke, trying to be as gentle as possible. Mei Mei sat proudly before the mirror, her eyes scanning her reflection with satisfaction. Today was her wedding day. She was to marry Prince Xian, the most powerful man in the eastern provinces. Her red wedding robe shimmered like fire, and her lips were painted the color of blood. To the world, she was a beautiful and perfect bride. But to Aminat, she was something else entirely. Aminat's skin was as dark as polished mahogany, a sharp contrast to Mei Mei's pale, porcelain complexion. Her quiet, tired eyes told stories of pain she was too afraid to voice. Born from her father's affair with a slave woman, Aminat had never truly belonged in the Chi household. She was a reminder of a past her father wished to erase. "Careful, you fool!" Mei Mei snapped, flinching suddenly. Aminat's heart skipped. "I'm sorry." Before she could finish, Mei Mei turned and slapped her hard across the face. The sound echoed like thunder in the room. "You want to ruin everything, don't you?" Mei Mei hissed, her voice like poison. "You're jealous. You always have been. You can't stand that I'm marrying a prince." Aminat's cheek burned, but she kept her head down. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "I didn't mean to. I'm really sorry." But Mei Mei wasn't listening. With a glare full of hatred, she stormed out of the room, her silk robes flowing behind her like a trail of smoke. Left alone, Aminat stood still, her tears falling silently onto the floor. Her hands clenched the hairbrush tightly, and for a moment she thought about throwing it, but she didn't. She bent down, picking up the scattered hairpins and silk ribbons left in Mei Mei's wake. Her heart ached, but anger bubbled quietly beneath her sorrow. Ever since she was a child, she had been treated like dirt in the Chi household. Her father, Mr. Chi, had never forgiven her for something she had no control over: her mother's death during childbirth. He married another woman who gave birth to Mei Mei. That was when Aminat's quiet suffering began. As she made her way out of the room, her hands full of discarded accessories, she noticed a door slightly ajar. It led to the old study where her father often met with important guests. She wouldn't have paid attention, except she heard voices. "I don't care how charming he is," Mr. Chi said firmly. "You must make him fall deeply in love with you. He must trust you completely. Then, when the time is right, we strike. The palace will be ours." Aminat froze. "Don't worry, father," Mei Mei replied with a cold laugh. "He already worships me. The crown will soon belong to us." A sharp gasp escaped Aminat's lips before she could stop herself. The room went quiet. Then, "Who's there?" The door was flung open, and Mr. Chi's eyes landed on Aminat. They blazed with fury. "You heard that?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. Aminat stepped back, her heart pounding. I didn't mean to." Mr. Chi marched up to her, grabbing her arm tightly. "Listen to me very carefully, you little curse. If you say a word of what you heard to anyone, I will sell you to the slave markets in the north. Do you understand me?" Aminat's lips trembled. She nodded. "Good," he spat. Without another word, he turned and walked away, Mei Mei smirking behind him. Aminat stood there, her whole body trembling. Her thoughts screamed at her to run, to warn someone, to do anything but stay silent. But the memory of chains, whips, and cold stone floors silenced her voice. As the family carriage rolled out of the compound toward the royal palace, Aminat sat quietly beside the others, her eyes filled with pain and fear. The red flags of celebration fluttered in the wind, but in her heart a storm had begun. A secret as dangerous as fire burned in her chest. The grand palace stood tall under the bright sun, its golden rooftops shining like fire against the blue sky. Colorful lanterns danced in the breeze, and drums echoed through the courtyard. Servants in red and gold lined up, bowing low as the Chi family arrived in their decorated carriage. Mei Mei stepped out first, proud and full of herself. Her red wedding dress sparkled, and she smiled like a queen. Mr. Chi followed, nodding politely to the nobles. Aminat stayed behind, dressed in a simple robe, her hands clasped nervously. She felt out of place as always, like a shadow in the light of her stepsister's glory. Soon Prince Sung walked out of the palace gates. He was tall, with sharp eyes and a strong jaw, dressed in a royal robe embroidered with dragons. His presence made everyone bow lower. The emperor, his father, stood beside him, old but powerful, with a long white beard and a crown heavy with jewels. The emperor pointed proudly to Mei Mei and said, "My son, your bride has arrived. This is Mei Mei, daughter of Mr. Chi." All eyes turned to Prince Sung, waiting for his approval. But he stayed silent. His eyes studied Mei Mei for a long moment. Then, to everyone's shock, he shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "I will not marry her." Gasps filled the courtyard. Mr. Chi's face turned pale. Mei Mei's smile dropped instantly. "What are you saying?" the emperor asked, his voice deep and full of warning. "If you refuse," he continued, "you will lose everything. The crown, the palace, your place as prince, all gone." Prince Sung clenched his jaw. He turned his face slightly, and then his eyes fell on someone standing quietly behind the crowd. It was Aminat. She stood still, eyes wide, unaware that anyone was watching her. The moment their eyes met, something in Prince Sung changed. He remembered her, Mr. Chi's other daughter. The one treated like a servant. The one who didn't belong. Without saying another word, he walked past everyone and stopped in front of Aminat. Her heart thudded loudly in her chest. She didn't understand what was happening. He took her hand. Everyone froze. "I will marry Mr. Chi's daughter," Prince Sung announced. "But not Mei Mei. I will marry Aminat." Aminat's mouth dropped open. She tried to pull her hand away. "No, your highness, please, this must be a mistake." But he held her hand tighter and gently pulled her to the front. Mei Mei's face turned red with rage. Mr. Chi's eyes burned with hatred. Their perfect plan, the dream of taking over the kingdom, was falling apart. The emperor looked surprised. He stared at Aminat for a long moment. Then, with a slow nod, he said, "Very well. It is settled then. Aminat will be your bride." Aminat's legs felt weak. She had been nothing more than a servant her whole life. And now, she was to become a princess. The wedding was grand, just as the traditions demanded. Red lanterns floated high above the palace, music of ancient flutes echoed in the air, and flower petals danced on the wind. Aminat sat beside Prince Sung, dressed in a red and gold hanfu with a veil covering half her face. Her dark skin glowed under the sunlight, yet her heart pounded with unease. Across the hall, Mei Mei sat in silence, her face tight with anger. Her fists were clenched, and her eyes never left Aminat. To everyone else, Mei Mei smiled politely, but deep inside she was burning with hate. After the ceremony, Aminat and Prince Sung were led to their chambers. Their room was lit with oil lamps, the bed covered in silk sheets. The scent of jasmine filled the air. It was meant to be a wedding night, yet there was no joy, only silence. Aminat sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. When she finally found her courage, she turned to face Prince Sung. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why did you choose me?" Prince Sung didn't look away. He removed his robe and placed it gently on the stand before answering. "Because she didn't love me," he said simply. "She only loved the power. No, I don't want a wife who dreams of stealing the throne." Aminat blinked. He walked closer and met her gaze. "I also heard things," he added, his voice low. "That you were bullied. That people looked down on you because of your skin. That your life was never yours." Aminat's lips parted, but she said nothing. No one had ever cared to notice that pain before. "I won't hold you forever," he promised. "Once I become emperor, you'll be free to go wherever you wish. You'll be free to become whoever you want." And with that, he climbed into bed and turned away. For a long moment, Aminat stood frozen. Then, slowly, she lay beside him and closed her eyes. It was the first night she had ever slept in silk. By morning, the warmth beside her was gone. Aminat sat up quickly and looked around. The room was quiet. No servants knocked. No prince sung in sight. She stepped out of the chambers, hoping to find him, but what greeted her were cold stares and sharp whispers. The palace maids whispered behind their sleeves. Concubines looked her up and down with disgust. Some even laughed quietly as she passed. Aminat lowered her head and walked faster, feeling every stare like a cut to the heart. She returned to her room, her hands shaking. Why did it feel like she was still a servant, even though she wore the title of a princess? Hours passed. Prince Sung did not return. Just as the sun dipped in the sky, a knock came at the door. A maid slipped in and handed her a folded piece of paper. Aminat opened it, and her eyes narrowed. "Come to the back garden. Now." No name, no explanation. But something about the handwriting was familiar. Curiosity pushed her forward. She wrapped herself in a shawl and walked out quietly, making her way through the garden path. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that made your skin crawl. At the far end of the garden, behind the stone wall covered in vines, she saw them. Mei Mei, dressed in black, stood with her arms crossed. Her red lips curled into a mocking smile. Behind her, half hidden behind the wooden fence, was Mr. Chi. Aminat froze. "You came," Mei Mei said coldly. "Good. We were beginning to think you'd gone soft." "What is this?" Aminat asked, stepping back slightly. Mr. Chi stepped forward from the shadows. "Now that you are the prince's bride, it is time you become useful to us." Aminat's heart dropped. "You will make him fall in love with you," Mei Mei said sharply. "And when he trusts you completely, when he lets his guard down, you will help us take over the palace." "I won't do that," Aminat whispered, her hands trembling. "You will," Mr. Chi said darkly. "Because if you don't, we'll remind the emperor who your mother was. Slave. A woman from outside these lands. Do you think they'll let you stay here once that secret spreads?" Tears welled in Aminat's eyes, but she clenched her fists. "You always wanted to be someone," Mei Mei hissed. "Well, now, you'll be the very thing that helps us rule this country. Or you'll lose everything. Even your life." Aminat looked at them both in fear and uncertainty. What will she do next?